Let's break down one of my favorite archetypes of all time, gods and goddesses in training. Welcome back to the channel. It is Uncle Makara, all relations. As you can notice, my skin is showing up with these red spots or whatever, going through some kind of a spiritual level up. I wanted to speak about the magician archetype because this one really speaks to my soul, speaks to my heart. The world doesn't necessarily need more warriors and kings. It needs more healers and magicians, according to me. The people who can see the code beneath the simulation, in a sense, okay? That's the way that I would describe this archetype. Now, the magician is the one that others call impossible. The magician is not some robe-wearing trickster pulling rabbits out of hats, okay? He's the one that looks at reality and says, this is a projection, I know it. I can rewrite it, actually, according to my liking. So, to change the perception of something is what the mage actually accomplishes. So he's your inner hacker of the matrix, okay? If you get it like this, it'll help you much deeper. He doesn't obey laws, he decodes them. He doesn't worship gods, he studies their algorithms. He doesn't pray for miracles, he becomes one, okay? Now, of course, I'm using he here, but it can also be a woman, right? The magician archetype. Now, of course, there's the light side of the magician. So the magician is consciousness made curious. The magician archetype bridges worlds together. Science and spirit, chaos and pattern, right? Thought and manifestation. So they see every symbol, every word, and every sound frequency carries power. And so he speaks with precision, right? There's this kind of unreactive nature of outcome independence for the magician. If you understand the flow state code of the mage, it'll really start to help you zoom out of situations where you're being too absorbed or too entangled into other people's nonsense. You can kind of zoom out and watch the play happen without getting super engrossed into it. So this archetype is not so reactive. It's more about becoming the cause rather than the effect, right? Because the magician listens deeper than others. They know that there is this hidden world that speaks to us in patterns and synchronicities. So where others see coincidence, they see correspondence. Where others see randomness, they see a rhythm. So, isn't this the original coder of the psyche, right? Tesla was a magician, so was Da Vinci, Steve Jobs, okay, Hermes. I mean, even kids who shift the world using meme culture, right? That they're digital magicians weaving spellcraft through pixels and memes. They don't need a potion, they need attention. They don't need a wand, they need intention. But then there's obviously a shadow to this magician archetype. This is where the magician or the mage starts giving unsolicited advice, okay? Nobody asked you, bro, okay? But you're keeping on telling me about this thing, and it has no relevance to whatever we're talking about, right? So this really needs to be handled as a mage. If you're on this path working of Primal Sutra, you have to start to understand that this is not the way we go about things. We don't impose our methods and wheels onto others. If you don't like this channel, you can just leave. There's no need for you to add extra stuff into the mix so that it adds more confusion. We're looking for clarity here as the mage. So when the magician forgets their humility, their wisdom curdles into a kind of manipulation, a very dark psychological manipulation. Playing puppet master instead of prophet. Knowledge becomes used for control. Understanding becomes their arrogance, right? They hide behind intellect to avoid intimacy, okay? They become so obsessed with mastering energy that they forget to feel energy. Isn't this a paradox, guys? Isn't this a wild irony of the moment? So the shadow magician is saying, look how much I know. And the awakened magician, the one that's integrated, says, look how much the mystery still humbles me, right? From control to creation, from cleverness to compassion. This is the transition out of the shadow archetype of the mage. From knowing the code to loving the coder, okay? I think a lot of magicians, they leave out source energy. They leave out God. Or they use source, but they're still using it like it's a transactional thing, right? I'll do this ritual, it'll get me this outcome, right? They're not thinking in terms of that divine energy. So how do you transmute the magician's lead? You stop using your gifts to escape emotions. And you start using your gifts to transfigure it. You don't just read about vibration, you breathe it. You don't just teach transformation, you become it. And you don't just manifest outcomes, you channel meanings. Every time you sit in silence and decode your own mind, you're doing a high-level alchemy, okay? You're turning the shadow into a signal, turning the noise into a deep knowing. So make your life your lab, your heartbreaking experiment, and your attention your wand. And watch, just watch your life transform and how you turn into the living philosopher's stone. So the future is written by those that can translate energy into action. I'm telling you this because this is the vision that I had for the future. A lot of us are know-it-alls and trying to, have all this knowledge, but without the understanding, without the embodiment, it doesn't mean anything, okay? I'm not spiritual just because I wear monk beads, okay? Or something physical, like my orgone crystals or something. That doesn't make me spiritual. What makes me spiritual is my embodiment, the understanding that spirit has changed and transmuted and dissolved into me, right? So I am one of the same of this divine essence and this expansion technology that I've understood. So I truly believe that every artist, every coder, every healer, every storyteller is still a magician archetype, okay? Because they're the one with the tools. They're the one with the techniques, right? They're not Felix the Cow with a little bag of tricks, right? I'm not saying that, but what I am saying is they have their tech sorted. They know it. They're reliable people. You go to them to solve something. And even if they're influencers, their content is spellcraft. Words, the music that they use, right? The choice of images and visuals. So if you are this magician archetype, and you've done the Jungian archetype quiz online or whatever, speak like your syllables rearrange words. The word abracadabra means I will create as I speak. So therefore, every time you speak, it is a word. That's why they call it spelling. It's a spell, okay? So write like your keyboard channels lightning, sure. Because that's what a magician does. They take imagination and they upload it into the collective dream, okay? So a magician, when they get cursed or hexed, they understand they have to change their paradigm, their belief system, to make that curse or hex tiny in their minds, right? So they have to actually alter perception. And by altering perception, they're also time travelers. They're hopping timelines, in a sense. And I think, honestly, this is how the elite operate. But that's a different story, and I don't want this video taken down, okay? But I understand that this is what they're doing behind the scenes. They're brainwashing us. But I'm not here to chase miracles. I am here to remember that I am one. And my heart is the wand that directs it all. My thoughts, my words, my actions. And when I'm coming from this love energy, this love frequency, right? Kind of Dante of me, I know, to take it in terms of love, and that's what that means, right? In terms of the monad. But the magician doesn't escape reality. He reprograms reality. So this world isn't broken, it's very badly scripted. And so it's time for you to actually rewrite the code, actually. Now that, my friend, will slap across timelines. You never see the real world directly, do you? You only see your version of it. Your mind is adding the time, the space, and trying to make your life more understandable. But reality is not fixed. This is why you could say that it's your imagination made visible. Reality is your imagination made visible, correct? The image, right? The image. And here's the truth about money, guys. I want to break down some occult principles here too, because I think that there's a deeper understanding here with this archetype. Banks don't just move money, right, guys? They create it from nothing. If they can print money anytime, why do we still have poverty? Because power wants you to believe that money is finite, that money is very scarce. And this scarcity paradigm has trickled in to the way that we think about money and ourselves and our lives. So crashes, wars, and crises, they're not accidents, they're ways for you to reset belief. They use trauma as a way to reconfigure people's minds. We know this. What about schools? Schools weren't there to make you wise, they were there to make you a workhorse, make you obedient, take away your creativity. Most of the time, schools were to train their kids to be fighters, to be in war. Make them trust the teacher more than their family. Teach them to believe in the nation and not themselves. Right? So this is why you were trained to say your race, your ethnicity. Oh, I'm Chinese. Oh, I'm Indian. Oh, I'm this. Oh, I'm that. They're just labels, guys. Right? The magician knows this. They understand. They see the cracks of society. and they choose to do something about it. They choose to take a stand. Even though it's a hidden stand, it's still a stand. What sounds today like power is actually control. You're responsible for everything. Fix yourself, right? Meditate harder. Take more pills. Because if you think that you're the problem, you will never unite with others to change the system. So you isolate, you self-improve, you obey. But in the old world, like Egypt, India, Greece, they knew that fate and gods and chaos played with their lives, man. So that's why they focus on excellence today, not control tomorrow. And honestly, I think the code out of this is eudaimonia, right? That long-lasting happiness flourishing, as we say in positive psychology. Money, identity, the nation, it's all created by imagination, guys. They used imagination to control people. Now we must use our imagination to set ourselves free. Simple as that. So question what you've been told is normal. Create instead of only consuming. Connect with others, community's real power. Join our Telegram. Give when others rise and share your feast. And use imagination as creation, not escape. If it weakens your spirit, it's propaganda. If it divides people, it's manipulation. So let's look at some of the great magicians out there, right? First of all, I gotta shout out my guide, my throat chakra guide, Hermes, okay? Listen, Hermes just wasn't a myth. He was a mind that realized as above, so below. So that means he knew that the universe was a mirror. Language was the bridge. He taught alchemy not as chemistry, but as self-transformation, right? The seal of quintessence. If you see my tattoo over here, we have the seal of quintessence inside of this dopamine triad. So he revealed, not concealed. Hermes represents the pure magician because he uses gnosis and awakening to uplift civilization, right? Not to dominate it, but to uplift it. Upward spiral. Nikola Tesla, this scientist mystic, so he didn't play with the electricity. He conversed with the electricity, okay? Saw the world as vibration, resonance, pattern. Pure hermetic science, too. While others use machines to control, Tesla used them to free up energy, to serve humanity, right? And he lived broke, but then died full of gnosis. Tesla was a really great channeler, according to me. He could listen to the cosmos and bring it down into form through his dreams, through his imaginations, through his deep trances that he got himself into. He was proof that you just need to tune your attention to the infinite, and then anything becomes possible. You don't need robes and fancy extraneous stuff to be a magician, okay? That's a lie in society, that we have to be in a robe, we have to look like this, right? That's all cosplay anyway. Carl Jung entered the subconscious just like the way the Magi enters the temple. Decoded symbols, he met his own demons, his own anima. He built maps for others to follow. And his red book was all invocation. And he also has this one book on magic. I believe he was also at one point talking to dream characters, correct? I think his real goal was integration. He took what the mystics called shadow and made it a therapy for the soul. Then we have Da Vinci. He didn't separate science and art. He fused them. He saw God in geometry, spirit in structure, divinity in design. So he didn't conquer nature, he collaborated with her. The magician's ultimate purpose is synthesis, oneness. And Da Vinci's notebooks were the blueprints of that divine fusion. Da Vinci invoked beauty itself, I believe. There's like corporate sorcerers too out there, right? These are examples of bad sorcerers. Now listen, I truly believe that Aleister Crowley had a brilliance to him, but he truly inverted it. He understood the mechanics of will, but he didn't understand the ethics of power. He used ritual not to expand awareness, but to feed into more ego and lust. So what did he do? He weaponized sexual acts, right? Turning sex into shock, initiation into indulgence. So his do what thou wilt philosophy became an excuse eventually for anarchy without compassion. And this is exactly when magicians start to rot. When their knowledge becomes pride, when freedom becomes predation. Sure, he unlocked the temple, but he let all the parasites in. Now, what do I mean by corporate sorcerers, right? They don't wear pentagrams, they wear logos. Their rituals are ads, their spells are algorithms. They study psychology not to heal you, but to hijack your attention, right? So they're like Crowley's grandchildren with MBA degrees. Except, why do they need demons when they invented dopamine metrics? Then we have the false gurus who use this kind of flowery spiritual language in order to farm followers, right? The dark magician loves more attention than truth. That's facts. They're just selfish, right? He doesn't serve God, he impersonates him. So the real magician shares power. The false one hoards it for themselves. Every magician goes through this eternal temptation. Okay, I did as well throughout my life. Will you use the secret to serve life, or to simply serve yourself? Wisdom without humility becomes sorcery. And Crowley's just a warning tattoo on the walls of every temple, right? Master the current, or the current will master you. Now you can talk a bunch of talk, like attention goes where energy flows, and words are magic spells, and knowledge is sacred, and you could say all of these things and still try to control others instead of cohere with it, and still try to dominate your reality instead of dance with it. The dark magician hoards secrets. The real magician becomes the secret, right? Some magicians, they use their will to enslave. Others use their will to enlighten. So power is neutral, intention is everything. So choose wisely, mages. Will your power heal, devour, or both? Okay, let this echo through your soul today as you make some adjustments to your character archetype. I hope you have an incredible rest of your day. May the flow be with you. Stay legendary. May you never be the same again. Osa, let's win. Upward spiral gang to infinity and beyond.